Ladies and gentlemen, sports fans alike, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. One of the couple, two, three best podcasts around. So sit back, grab yourself a cold one and a Polish sausage, park your keister in the French room, and listen to Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago.
In Chicago, you know that all sports rock. The Bears, Hawks, Bulls, Cubs, and Sox. Pick your favorite, you can choose. As long as the Packers lose. For everything you need to know, it's Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago.
Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. This is your hosts, Alex and Sean. On this episode, we've got Mitch Trubisky doing Snow Angels. We've got John Fox owning a monkey. And we've got Cubs probably not getting one of the brand name pitchers you were hoping for. But first, I'd like to thank our sponsor, the Rockford Ice Hogs. If you're not familiar with the Rockford Ice Hogs, they're the AHL minor league affiliate of the Chicago Blackhawks. What does that mean for you? You get to see the stars of tomorrow today at family-friendly, affordable prices. Season is in full gear, so make sure you head on over to icehogs.com, get yourself tickets, hat, shirt, jersey, and more. Tell them Swerski Sports sent you. Alex, my friend, should we nibble around this and talk a little hot stove, or do you want to talk about John Fox's monkey, or what would you like to talk about?
We could start with some hot stove. I mean, there's really not much to talk about right now because this off season has been lame. Yeah,
this off season has been really weird. Is typically by now you're starting to see some of the big names come off the board, and if not, at least some credible leads and about what's happening, and you're not really seeing that.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times you see players sign right before Christmas, right before the new year, because you kind of want to know where you're going to be come the next year. You don't really want to be sitting around thinking about it. But since the free agent pool is very small, but a lot of the free agents in that pool remaining are the big ones, like Arrieta, Darvish, some of the position players like Moustakas and Hosmer. You know, teams are trying to see which domino falls first because that's going to have a lot to do with the value. So it's almost kind of like we're waiting and seeing who pounces first here.
Yeah, and you know, you've got an Alex Cobb who most expected the Cubs to just reel in, but I have a feeling that the Cubs were hoping for something along the lines of a 4-year, $60 million deal, and you're getting word that he might be asking for a 5-year, $100+ million deal. So that's that situation.
Yeah, I mean, I really thought that it was just a matter of when, not if, for a while. I mean, I thought they were going to lock him up really, really soon. In fact, for one of the websites I write for, I wrote a whole article. I put it all together, and I was just waiting for the numbers to come in and then post saying the Cubs sign Alex Cobb. Now I'm kind of doubting that they even bring him in. I mean, look, I like Alex Cobb. I think he would give you a very solid 4 guy, but for $20 million a year, especially if we're talking over 3 years, come on, he's not worth that much.
Yeah, it's you know, some of these pitchers are getting a little ridiculous. I mean, it's one thing. It's one thing to get a lengthy contract, and it's another thing to get a high per year value on that contract. But these guys are wanting the cake and eat it too.
Right. I mean, they're seeing what these guys are going for. Like you said, they're kind of seeing like, you know, they want me now. I'm, quote, in my prime, even though he had Tommy John surgery, he's in like his prime years of age. It's not like he's 35 and above. He's proven that he's a good pitcher, and he showed a solid season for coming back from Tommy John surgery. So he probably thinks this is going to be the best time to pounce on all the money he can get.
Yeah, honestly, I don't blame him, but you sort of have to be realistic. is any one of us, is you sort of know whatever the job it is you do, you know the market value and what they pay. And if a competitor company, you try to get a job there doing the same thing you're doing at your current job, you might be able to get a little bit bonus here, a little bit bonus there, maybe work in some more vacation days or an end of the year bonus or something, but it's bite-sized morsels more than you're getting. Some of these guys are like, well, I know what the market value is and let me get, 40% more than that. And it's getting to the point of greedy, and rather than setting yourself up for the future.
Right. I mean, there's going to come a time where you're just going to have to say, well, if I'm not going to sign anywhere for this price, then got to find the next best thing. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how long it drags out with him. Like I said, once one domino falls, usually the rest of them fall like right afterwards. But Alex Cobb is kind of an interesting one because though he is a solid pitcher and people expected him to get a decent contract this offseason, he's not of the status of Jake Arrieta or Yu Darvish. I mean, they are the big ones. So he's kind of in that situation where he's not like some, signed to a 1 year, like a Yoelish Chacin type guy that Milwaukee just signed, but he's not Jake Arrieta or Yu Darvish either. He's kind of in the middle. So I feel like though the dominoes will fall with an Arrieta or Darvish signing, he still might be in his own little world in terms of when he's going to be signed and where he's going to be signed, if that makes any sense.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I honestly would love to be able to bring an agent onto the show at some point, just to kind of ask questions about the process of this all, because you're right, is these guys, they peacock themselves around and they, you get your agent like Boras dropping, we're talking about Arrieta and dropping the $200 price tag in interviews. I wonder what the process is, because you clearly are sprinkling that around, creating the illusion that that's what you're expecting, knowing you're not. You ask for 200 when you really want 150. And if you don't get the bites on it, is how do you start circling back to teams going with your tail between your legs going, yeah, I didn't get 150. How about 125? Like, how do you circle back around there? There's got to be some sort of mastery art of this.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's really interesting to kind of think about what goes on among GMs. And what I'd like to know is during the winter meetings, obviously the big guys were being talked about, but I feel like Alex Cobb was talked about by a number of teams. And clearly, I think if they would have thought he was worth $20 million, he would have got it already, even before a Yu Darvish or a Jake Arrieta signed. So what that tells me is that he's not going to get $20 million a year. It's not going to happen. What I would like to know is, what have other GMs said? Where do they think his value is? Because a lot of people think his value is probably like in the low teens per year, and I think that's fair. But if his company is asking for $20 million and he hadn't been signed at the GM meetings, then I really think that no one was really giving him any kind of serious offer because everyone thought that was way too much. I really, really felt that Cobb was going to be signed by the Cubs during those GM meetings. I was ready for it. But clearly they weren't on board and other teams weren't on board. So there were a number of teams interested.
Yeah, I think you're right. And typically what you see is you'll see the non-big names, the lower end contracts, the short-term contracts, those will go first. And then you'll have one big contract, one big name sign, and then the dominoes start falling. And then you start filling in the gaps with the remaining guys, the ones who aren't the top guys, but they weren't they're the last prospects, the people that go, oh, I didn't get the Yu Darvish. I didn't get Jake Arrieta, but I still need a starting pitcher. Who's left? Those kind of contracts. And those are the ones where you start getting, bargains. And Alex Cobb didn't go in that first round of contracts. He's clearly not in the league of a Yu Darvish or a Jake Arrieta. And honestly is, this is the last week of 2017, and pitchers and catchers report the first couple days of February. So we got like a month before, just over a month before pitchers and catchers start reporting. And if you're Alex Cobb, you're like, man, I haven't signed anywhere. It's got to be a little disheartening.
Well, yeah, and especially since Alex Cobb is thinking he's not going to go back to Tampa Bay. He's going to be somewhere completely different. And when it's coming up that quick, I mean, you got to kind of figure stuff out because you got to move. You got to, move your family. It's, it's a whole different world when you go somewhere else, especially somewhere that's probably going to be completely different because, people that were interested in him, teams, were like the Cubs. There were some Eastern teams, like the Yankees were interested, but, that's still further up north. We're not talking like South Florida here. So it's a big lifestyle change for him, and I feel like he's got to be thinking, I got to figure this out at least by the new year. I can't imagine him wanting to go another few weeks without signing, knowing how there's not much time, like you said, at all after New Year's before pitchers and catchers report.
Yeah, you figure this week, it's your off season and you're just downtime celebrating. You got your Christmas holiday, couple days, then New Year's, and then you're like, man, I'm counting down the days until pitchers catchers report, and that's the point where you're probably. And I mean, I know it's a different sport, but I remember, oh my God. Who's the ex-Bears player that hosts like the Bears pregame stuff on Fox?
I know.
Defensive line. Yeah, he's Spice Adams.
Oh, Spice Adams. Yeah. Duh.
Oh my God. Can't believe it took us that long to think. So Spice Adams. I know it's a different sport, and we totally went off the deep end on that one. Spice Adams, when he got cut by the Bears,
too, on the score. Gosh.
When he was cut by the Bears, and he was still, trying to get back in the league, but it was one of those things where you didn't expect to, but you were hoping to, and he would make these videos that were funny and humorous, but there was a sense of reality in there that he was, shows him like doing a workout and then texting his agent, be like, anybody, did you just fax the Bears that I'm working out? Send him my tape. What's going on? I think that's the point you're probably getting with Alex Cobb in about another week, where he's going to be frantically texting his agent, making phone calls, like, hey, what's going on? How's everything going? What's the word? Any teams interested? What kind of contract offer are they giving me? Yeah, I mean, that's when you're Alex Cobb, that's probably what's happening. And if you're Yu Darvish or Jake Arrieta, you're probably getting a little anxious as well. Wouldn't you think?
Yeah, and I mean, especially since Jake Arrieta, he's got Mr. Scott Boras, and Scott Boras is looking for the big bucks, the $200 million contract, and I just can't help but wonder what Arrieta really thinks of it. I mean, I'm sure he's really glad to be getting a ton of money, and he knows he's going to be getting a ton of money, especially considering who his agent is and where his value is at right now based on what he's done the past 4 years. But I gotta also think it's got to be kind of stressful, right? Because that there's going to be teams that are not going to want to pay all that money, whereas if the ceiling wasn't that high, Arrieta would probably know there'd be a ton of teams making offers to him. But with this kind of financial plan that Scott Boras is demanding, it's got to be a bit more stressful because there's a lot less certainty.
I was reading an article from the perspective of the Washington Nationals, and it was talking about how, I think it was Jason Worth's contract is off the books. And they were like, well, you could probably get Jake Arrieta ultimately for like a 5-year, $110 million contract, and that's essentially the same sort of money that Jason Worth was getting. So it matches up, and you could have the Nationals sign an Arrieta and have the best rotation in baseball. And I was like, man, I mean, that's pretty. I mean, if you're Jake Arrieta, you get $100 million 5-year contract, that's just got to be a real kick in the junk, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I know it's just insane money. And from when I was a kid, I remember the very first $1 million a year player. Trivia question. Do you remember who the first $1 million a year Major League Baseball player was?
No idea.
Cal Ripken.
Okay, that makes sense. And what year was that?
That I couldn't tell you. I just remember when he signed.
It had to be the 90s.
Yeah, 92, 90, probably 92, 93.
Yeah, that was a year before I was born.
Yeah, but I remember what a big deal it was. Somebody signed for $1 million a year, and now you got Jake Arrieta probably insanely disappointed only getting $20 million a year.
Yeah, and also considering that like $1 million a year these days, you're paying like guys Rene Rivera and people like that. Where then the first $1 million a year guy was a Hall of Famer.
Yeah, and not just a Hall of Famer, but like, face of the generation.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, someone who broke streak records and everything like that. I mean, he was the next Iron Man of baseball. Very historically significant player. And yeah, the first one to get $1 million a year, that's something. And if it was what you said, like around 92, 93, I mean, that's around 25 years. So, think about it. Sports has been around for a long time, and ball players weren't getting $1 million plus a year until, the early 90s, after all these years that baseball has been around.
Yeah. And what was I going to say? Oh yeah. And you got, a washed up player like CC Sabathia that just signed a $10 million a year contract.
Yeah. I mean, he was showing signs last year of being the old CC, but what is he, 38 now?
He's something like that. He's old.
Yeah. I mean, he's been around for a long, long time. Yeah, he's 37. So close enough. And boy, I mean, he has been around for a long time. I mean, I remember as pretty much a little kid watching him pitch. I remember that one year in Milwaukee he had in 2008. Yeah, he's been pitching since 2001.
Yeah, and it was a time when he was absolutely dominant, but that time is come and gone.
Yeah, I mean, last year he had a 3.69 ERA and 148.2 innings, but a 4.49 FIP, where he hasn't had a FIP under 4 since 2012, and that was the last time he was an All-Star. So think about this. He's a 6-time All-Star, he's a Cy Young Award winner, and all of that was 2012 and before, and now it's going to be 2018, and he's going to be 37. So, he showed improvement last year, kind of closer to back to where he was, but, he'll never be the CC Sabathia of his prime.
So, going back to these guys is, this is a little bit of a murky water as far as, some of these big name guys haven't, the first pillar hasn't fallen yet. So this is leading to one of those surprise teams coming in and possibly signing big names. It's because it's usually when they happen quick and fast, it's a big name player, Dodgers, Yankees, Cubs. When it lingers for a while and you don't get the bites that you expected, that's the moments when teams like the Angels or the Brewers or teams like that can sneak in and make even the Rockies can sneak in and make a big bid and wind up with a guy.
Exactly. And I think that a lot of people are probably getting impatient at this point because they kind of want things set for themselves as well. I mean, not just the players, but the teams kind of want everything set soon before pitchers and catchers report. So I want to say that something big is going to happen within the next few days. I feel like it has to at this point. I mean, it would be really, really weird, even though the way things have gone, it's really hard for me to imagine this going on where no one signs anywhere, nothing's happening, nothing's really gaining ground until after New Year's. And New Year's is just this upcoming Monday, so less than a week. New Year's Eve is Sunday. It's really hard for me to imagine for this to keep going. So I feel like something's going to happen very, very soon. If not, I'll really, really be surprised.
I will be really surprised, but we're starting to get to the point where I really think like a dark horse team can start swooping in.
Yeah, absolutely. And not only a dark horse team, but a team that you wouldn't suspect going after kind of a big free agent. I mean, there have been teams rumored to have interest in certain players, but people kind of write them off because they're thinking, well, they can't afford it. They're not in the situation to get them. But sometimes because of these circumstances, you see that happening, like you said. So I think once the first domino falls, you'll see the signings happen like crazy over the next 2-3 days afterward, maybe even that same day. Because I'm just so sick of hearing rumor after rumor. And I feel like a lot of the rumors are just kind of forced so people will kind of stay interested or someone has something to write about. Like you'll hear, Team A was calling about Yu Darvish briefly, and they'll say, "Oh, big interest from this team in Yu Darvish, big team in this team and that team in Jake Arrieta." Where it's really not big interest; it's just GMs calling people because that's what they do. But there's been nothing going on, so you need something to talk about.
I just got a message that I was wrong. It was Nolan Ryan was the first $1 million player.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, so I'm trying to think of. I still have the Sporting News cover with it somewhere in my collection of baseball memorabilia. I have to pull it up. Maybe.
Well, Ripken or either or. You're two Hall of Famers we're talking here.
Yeah, but Nolan Ryan really makes sense because I would pay $1 million a year for Nolan Ryan.
Yeah, I mean, one of the dominant pitchers of a generation.
One of the most dominant pitchers of all time.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, he did his thing for so many years. He was, in his mid-40s when he was done? I mean, that guy, you couldn't take him down. And Robin Ventura proved that.
That's true. And there was the time that
that's like his defining moment.
He really did. He was 46 years old. Robin Ventura was 23, and he whooped his butt.
Yeah, I mean, just imagine like a bigger, rougher, tougher, a lot better John Lackey. Just that big, burly, I don't take nothing, rootin' tootin' guy, just ready to whoop some ass, and that's what. That's what he did.
He was if John Lackey was amazing.
Exactly. Yeah, and a little bigger and can throw harder.
Yeah, here we go. One of baseball's most infamous brawls began with a 46-year-old Nolan Ryan putting White Sox third baseman Robin Ventura in a headlock. It ended with Ventura sitting out with a 2-game suspension.
Well, it's funny because Robin Ventura was a really good player. He had a really good career, but people remember him as the guy that got his ass beat by Nolan Ryan.
It was funny because I clearly grew up as a Cubs fan, and I grew up in White Sox country. So when Robin Ventura got his butt whooped, I was just like, man, Nolan Ryan is now one of my favorite players of all time.
And that was what? Early 90s, obviously.
Yeah.
I know it was before my
Yeah,
time.
I mean,
Like 1990?
maybe 92, 91.
Yeah, it had to be sometime around there. I mean, I've seen the clip many, many times. And every year on its anniversary, it's celebrated on baseball Twitter.
August 4th, 1993.
1993. Okay, so a year before I was born. I knew it was in the early 90s sometime.
Yeah, I was trying to think. Like, it was definitely before I started high school, so, but not by much. So it was, 93.
Put this in perspective about Nolan Ryan. He retired after 1993. 1993 was his last year. He began pitching in 1966.
Yep.
I think that's amazing.
I've got Nolan Ryan's rookie card in my collection.
Yeah, I mean, that was his big league debut. He only pitched 2 games in 1966 and then didn't really make 20 or more starts until 1968. So he didn't pitch in 1967 in the majors, but still, I mean, you think about like the 69 Cubs. The New York Mets had Nolan Ryan on that Miracle Mets team. And then he was beating up Robin Ventura in 1993, the year before I was born.
All right. So, the Nolan Ryan Topps rookie card was from 1968. There were 2 players on the card. Can you name the other player that was Nolan Ryan and who else? Give me a hint. They were both on the Mets.
Both on the Mets? Let me think. And you said that was 1968.
Yeah.
Tom Seaver?
Jerry Koosman.
Oh, okay, yeah, Jerry Koosman. He was another pitcher, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah, he was their number 2 starter. Wow, he was really good that year too.
Yeah, Jerry Koosman. I still have that rookie card from him. Yeah, I clearly didn't buy it when it came out, but years later, in probably the 80s, I bought it.
Yeah, because I figured my first guess would be Tom Seaver. My second guess probably would have been, I don't know. I mean, I think of the 69 Mets, even though it was the 68 Mets, so I don't know who was really on both other than Seaver. But when I thought of the 69 Mets, I thought of guys like Tug McGraw or something, but I don't know if he was on the team in 68.
Yeah, it's crazy. So Jerry Koosman was a rookie the same year as Nolan Ryan, and his last full season in the big leagues was 1984, a decade before Nolan Ryan retired.
Yeah, that's really amazing. I mean, Nolan Ryan, I don't know how his arm didn't fall off after throwing that hard for so long. And I'm looking at his career numbers now. He had several years of going over 320 innings a year. And he totaled over 5,000 innings and over 5,000 strikeouts. It's incredible.
But yeah, so right now we are in the twilight of Major League Baseball free agency, and it has been a dud so far.
Yeah, I mean, think about the trades the Marlins have made. I mean, the returns haven't been epic at all.
No. And you've got, a bunch of short-term contracts for back-end rotation guys and middle relief guys, and all the big names on the board. So it's you're either going to have a flurry of things over the next couple of days, or you're going to see much lower contracts than expected. And there's really you're not going to see come second week of January, the dominoes fall with these massive contracts.
Right. I just something happened already. Just something happened. That's what I want. Obviously, the Cubs are really linked to Yu Darvish right now. He's been meeting with other teams. In terms of the Cubs getting Darvish, I mean, I think it's kind of a coin flip right now. I could see us getting him. I could see him going somewhere else just because there are a number of teams interested. I could see him going back to Texas. I know the Twins are really interested. Frankly, I don't think he wants to go to the Twins. But, I think there's a decent chance he'll come here. But I could see him, like I said, going somewhere else. I'm curious to see where Jake goes. Sure as heck not going to be here, but just something happened. I mean, seriously.
Yeah, I'm getting bored at this point.
Me too. And I wake up every morning checking my phone and hoping, is there big news? Is there big news? Nope, nothing.
Yeah, I was hoping that Manny Machado got traded, not because I actually really want Manny Machado to re-sign in Baltimore because I kind of like the Orioles. They're like my non-Chicago team that I root for casually.
Yeah, I like the Orioles.
And I was like, I kind of hope Manny Machado stays, but I also just wanted him to get traded just so something happened.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. Now, from what I hear from that, there's going to be no trade. Machado's just going to stay put, and he's probably going to leave via free agency next year because I don't think that the Baltimore Orioles are going to pony up the dough that he's going to want, like other teams will probably end up ponying up. And obviously you've heard that he doesn't want to get traded to the Yankees, or the owner doesn't want to trade him to the Yankees, I should say. The White Sox thing never really made sense to me. So, yeah, I just don't see anything happening with him.
Yeah, and some of the deals that I've heard about the Cubs offering were like Almora and Montgomery and Addison Russell. And I'm like, that's a lot to give up for 1 year of Manny Machado.
Right. That's the thing I keep preaching is, yeah, Manny Machado is great, but if he's only going to be here 1 year and you're going to really limit your window of contention, why do that? If you traded for him and you somehow knew he was going to resign here, then yeah, you'd obviously be a bit more tempted, but he's going to test the market. When he becomes a free agent, he'd be stupid not to.
Yeah, I mean, this is his one opportunity to just not only make enough money for the rest of his life, but his kids' life, his grandkids' life, and that's that. And you'd be stupid to give a hometown discount to a team that you played for 10 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. I have some breaking baseball news for you right here. Are you ready for this one?
Yes.
Mike Olt has been signed to a minor league deal with the Boston Red Sox. You remember good old Mike Olt?
I do.
Mike Olt.
Well, at least he's doing something.
Because I kind of wondered what happened to him after last year because I know he was in the minor leagues and not doing very well. And I remember liking him when he first came up, even though he struck out like crazy. I thought, he may not hit the ball very much, but when he does make contact, it goes flying off the bat. I mean, you remember some of those home runs he hit as a Cub. They were just absolute bombs. But, he didn't hit above the Mendoza line, and he struck out a lot. So, he wasn't really cut out to be in the majors, and I hope he gets back at some point, but, oh well. We got Chris Bryant now.
I'll make that swap any day of the week.
Yeah, because remember, Mike Olt was the starting third baseman to begin the 2015 season.
Yeah, he was.
It's easy to forget that, but he was, because the whole Bryant staying down for another 2 weeks or whatever, that whole thing. So yeah, that opening night with John Lester on the mound, Mike Olt was the third baseman.
Did you know Felix PA was still playing professional baseball in 2016?
Where?
He for the Uni President 7-Eleven Lions of the Chinese Professional Baseball League.
The Hater Whatty What's? The 7-Elevens?
The Uni President 7-Eleven Lions of the Chinese Professional Baseball League.
Wow. Good for him. I haven't followed Felix PA in years. Hey, at least he's playing somewhere.
Yeah.
You know, I asked a fun trivia question the other day, and you might have answered it. I can't remember. A lot of people did, but it was who is the 3 remaining active MLB players from the 2008 Cubs? Did you see that one?
I did, and it was funny because I got 2 right off the bat, and I was like trying to think of the third one, and I finally I tweeted it out, and I was like, and then I looked up and I saw somebody already beat me to it. So then I jokingly, but it was like Fukadomi.
Yeah, he hasn't been in the big
Which
leagues
made
in
me
a
go
while.
on eBay. Which made me go on eBay and look at Fukadomi jerseys, and there's people still asking for $200 for a Fukadomi jersey. I'm like, what kind of idiot is going to pay $200 for a Cubs Fukadomi jersey?
I guess a lot of people like doing it as a joke. I don't know. I mean, I remember when Fukadome first came over, and he was a huge deal. Like, everyone and their mother who was a Cubs fan bought Fukadome jerseys. Like, there are probably millions out there still that were bought in 2008.
Yeah. You could still find unworn ones on eBay.
Oh, I bet. Yeah.
I'm like for $20 I would buy one. $200? No, not at all.
Well, you know, it was kind of funny. When I read that the Cubs signed Fukadome, I didn't really know who he was. I was still a kid then. But I read it and I said, "Mom, who's this?" But I didn't say Fook. I said it a little differently. And Mom and Dad said, No, it's Fukadome. Don't say the other thing. It's Fukadome.
In 2016, Fukadome became the 4th player in NPB history to register multiple cycle hits as he helped the Tigers to 8-3 victory over his former team, the Chunichi Dragons.
Yeah, because...
So he was still playing baseball.
Yeah, I mean, and I remember when he went back to Japan, he went back to mashing it again, and he was obviously really good with the Dragons before he came over, so it's just too bad for him that it never really translated in Major League Baseball, but, that happens.
Do you remember who the last the Major League team he played for was?
Wasn't it the Sox?
Yep.
Because he was there for
White Sox
very briefly.
1 year, and he was released in June. He didn't play the whole year, and then the Yankees signed him to a minor league contract, and he played for the Scranton Wilkes-Barre AAA team.
Oh, I don't remember him with the Yankees organization. The last time I remembered seeing him was with the White Sox, and he only played 24 games that year. And I remember him playing in Cleveland because we traded him to Cleveland.
Yeah. So Fukadome was signed by the Yankees on July 13th, 2012, and was released by the Yankees September 3rd, 2012, after hitting .264 in 43 games for the AAA team.
You know what's funny? I'm looking at his numbers now. I mean, his on-base percentages were pretty good. Even when we traded him in 2011, he was slashing .273, .374, .369. Obviously, the power never transitioned. He was not a power hitter, but his on-base percentages, 2008, .359, 2009, .375, and 2010, .371, the 3 full years he was a Cub. I mean, that guy knew how to draw walks, man. He just didn't really hit for a high average, and he didn't hit the ball very hard, but he got on base at a good rate.
Yeah, I mean, now you wouldn't, like, in 2017, if you had those numbers, you'd be like, I'm okay with the low batting average and the no pop.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of funny. It was a little different back then, the way we kind of analyzed the game. Because it's funny, I'm really looking back at his numbers now. He wasn't that bad. He wasn't the superstar, obviously. He still was never the superstar we thought he was going to be. But boy, the way we remember Fukudome, you would have thought he was like Mike Olt with less power, or like hitting like Darwin Barney. But these on base percentages are really good, and I think if he could have had a little bit more pop, he would have stuck around longer, because his highest home run total in 2010 was 13. And then before that, he had 11. And then before that, if he had 10, if he had some more home run pop and he slugged the ball a little bit, but he kept up with that on base, I think he could have stayed around for a while.
Yeah. I mean, it was just that, $12.5 million salary in 2009. That really, a lot of money for, very few home runs. I think that was the big downer there.
Yeah, that was probably the lack of batting average. And I know batting average doesn't always tell the whole story, but you thought he was going to hit for more power, because we were looking at kind of more of the 20-ish range of power and bit more production there. But hey, he drew his walks. He drew 93 walks in 2009. And before that, he drew 81 walks. And let's not forget what a beast he always was in April.
In his, in the 87 games he played for the Cubs in 2011, his on base percentage was 374.
Yeah.
So the guy was getting on base. You're right. We were always framed with the old ways of thinking about baseball, and you start thinking about it now, and you're like, man, this poor guy got a raw deal.
Yeah. I mean, I'm looking at his wins above replacement. I know B-WAR isn't as good as F-WAR, and neither B-WAR or F-WAR are the perfect evaluators, but if you look at his numbers, 2008, 0.6, 2009, 2.1, 2010, 1.3, 2011 with the Cubs, 1.2. Then it was in the negatives with the White Sox and Cleveland. Those aren't fantastic WAR numbers, but they're positive WAR numbers. So, again, not terrible. If you kind of even things out, because his on base was well above average, his power numbers were below what we thought. His batting average was right around average. His OPS is right about average. So, overall, he was just kind of an average player that drew a lot of walks, which, again, not living up to expectations, but not as bad as I thought.
His Cubs numbers were better than most years of Jason Hayward's career.
And
Jason Hayward's, if you take away 2010, his on-base percentages are 319, 335, 349, 351, 359, 306, 326. If you take away 2012, his home runs are 18, 14, 14, 11, 13, 7, and 11. So these are not too... I mean, Fukudomi's numbers are a little bit better.
It's very weird to think of. I mean, let's face it, though. What makes Jason Hayward more valuable is the defense.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I think just the Cubs were hoping to get that guy that played for the Cardinals that one year.
Yeah, I mean, his 2012 and his 2015 were obviously his best career years. He had a really good rookie year. Jason Hayward is an interesting case because I recently wrote about him for Cubby's Crib. And, obviously the defense transitioned. That he was expected to be a great defender, and he's been nothing short of an unbelievable defender. But he doesn't have the power that people thought he had. He doesn't have the massive batting skills consistently. I mean, his last few years were not very good. He was great in 2015 with the Cardinals, and he had a few good years in Atlanta, but he never really transitioned into what they thought he was going to be. Because remember, when he came up, that first game against the Cubs in 2010, he was supposed to be the next big superstar. And it never quite happened, but he still has the tools and the ability, I think, to be a really good ball player.
I think so. I think so. I think we're going to see. Hopefully, we continue to see improvement. This year. Hopefully, he's working like he did last offseason, and you see a better and better player.
Yeah, I mean, what I said in one of my articles was he's shown that he can have a good offensive season. We've seen it before. Have we seen it consistently? No, but we've seen it before. And he's still young enough to kind of say, I got plenty of years left in the tank, and I'm going to be able to go out and prove myself again. Like I said, he did it in St. Louis. He did it in 2012. So I think there's still a possibility that we can see a good bat from Hayward next year. And last year, I mean, it was an improvement. It still wasn't great. It was pretty much an average hitting season. So hopefully that kind of keeps building up. But if he could find that swing from 2015 with the Cardinals, that would be wonderful.
Yeah. But yeah, not much else going on in baseball. Let's move over just real quick to the Blackhawks. I guess that win streak was kind of a mirage because the last two games have been pretty abysmal. The 4-1 loss to the Devils and the 4-0 loss to the Stars. Not good.
Not good at all. Pretty ugly, especially against the Stars. That was a brutal, brutal game. Against the Devils, the first period was probably as horrific as you could think of, but they played better in the second period and the third period. They just weren't getting a lot of puck luck, but they dug themselves a really, really deep hole. And now you have the meatballs coming out and yelling at Crawford again when this defense is crumbling and once again not doing what they're supposed to be doing. And I think you described it best. That win streak kind of feels like a mirage.
Here's a stat. The Hawks have outshot their opponents by 82 so far this season. The NHL average is 8.
Oosh.
So they're putting a lot of pucks on net, but they're, without analyzing the shot per shot, they're either easy shots that are going, clear line of sight for the goalie, or they just have terrible luck.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it is kind of the line drive shot, right? The goalie, easy saves. And they've had a lot of tough puck luck. I mean, look at how many shots have gone off the post. They're among the league leaders in that. So there's definitely some puck luck involved. There's also some strategy involved and movement of the puck, because we've seen flashes where they move and finesse like we know they do and they're putting it in the back of the net. But you see a lot of games where they're just getting easy shots on goal, and it's kind of a hard thing to fix. But, after all those years of doing it with finesse and getting a lot of good bounces, sometimes it just doesn't go your way.
And you've got real offensive struggles, and part of it is you've got the regression of Richard Panik. He's got at this point 5 goals, 9 assists, 14 points this season. You're not seeing him win board battles, and that is not the player that you saw last year, and that's not the player that you need out there to be able to score goals.
I'm trying to pinpoint him because from 2015 when he came over to last year, he was really good for what he was. Very underrated player, and you thought, wow, you could get something good out of this guy. And it wasn't just like the 1 year was really good. He was good the year he came over, but now things are regressing. Part of me thinks he's just having a bad season. Part of me thinks there's a little kind of puck luck involved, like I mentioned earlier. And the other part of me is asking, was the Richard Panik thing kind of a fluke, and he's really not as good as we thought he was? That's kind of a question that I'm asking myself, and I don't have an honest answer for that right now.
Yeah, and it goes hand in hand with what happened to Jonathan Taves' offense. Is at this point in the season, He's a +6, which I mean, granted, Nobody really looks at the plus and minus as closely as they did in, years past. But,
Right.
you expect him at this point to be, probably plus 12, plus 13, and he's a plus 6. He's still a good player. And the NHL, I don't know if you saw this, the NHL Network had their countdown of the top captains of all time. And do you know where Jonathan Toews ranked?
Was it like 7?
Ahead of Wayne Gretzky, ahead of Mario Lemieux, ahead of Nick Lidstrom, ahead of Rocket Richard.
Yeah, that's some big company to be ahead of. And when it comes to Jonathan Toews, in my opinion, I don't think he's playing bad. I think him is more just puck luck. Things aren't going into the back of the net. I think he's still doing good things out there. He's just not getting the breaks.
Yeah, and you'd hoped that having Saad next to him would help cure what ailed him, and it just not. And you're right. It's not like he's playing bad. It's just that he's not scoring, and I can't put my finger on what's going on. Some of it is he's not putting the goal where they're, the puck where they're not. He's banging them in, and the goalie's got a pad there. Somebody's got a stick there. A good shot just misses, hits a post. Like, some of it is just bad luck, but some of it is just not playing well offensively.
Yeah, that's a really weird one to pinpoint right there. But I just think that things aren't breaking his way. We've seen so many games where he's getting shots off and he's doing things, and they're just not finding the back of the net. I don't know. It's hard to describe with him. But also, we talked earlier about how other teams have managed to beat the Blackhawks in their own way, that they've been built to beat the Blackhawks. They've been coached to beat the Blackhawks, and you could play great, but sometimes if you're just out-coached by the other team, it's hard to win. So I think there's a lot of factors going on there.
Also, a not surprising fact is Duncan Keith is the ice time leader for the Blackhawks. Not a surprise at
shocking.
all. Where it starts to get a little more shocking is he's averaging 4 minutes more than any other defenseman per game. Do you know who number 2 is? I'll give you a hint.
Hockey or just on the Hawks?
On the Hawks. I'll give you a hint. It's somebody that fans wish wasn't up that high in minutes.
Seabrook?
Yeah. And I think you got a combination of a guy in Seabrook that's out there too much, and Duncan Keith is a weird guy because you don't have anybody comparable to him at this stage in his career, and you are just putting some serious miles on him. For no reason when you're carrying 8 defensemen. You need to ease up on Duncan Keith, because if you do plan to do anything, he's going to have to be your best defenseman going forward, and you burn him out. And he's, I don't even know how old he is right now offhand, but he's not a young guy.
No, he's not. And I mean, both those guys have so many miles on them between all the years they've played in the NHL, plus all those playoff runs. Remember, Keith in the 2015 playoffs, he carried that defense on his back with Corey Crawford. They would not have won if it weren't those two guys. So I can't imagine how many hockey years that could have taken off his life because of that run.
Yeah, and you're mentioning Corey Crawford, and before you mentioned about Meatballs, talking bad about Corey Crawford,
that drives me up a wall.
Oh, it totally drives me up a wall. But here's kind of a stat for it is, I don't know what it is after these last 2 games, but prior to these last 2 games, if you take every single NHL goalie who's made at least 20 appearances. Do you know who number 1 is in save percentage?
Is it Corey Crawford?
Yep. Corey Crawford, number 1 goalie in save percentage with NHL goalies with at least 20 appearances prior to these last 2 games. Do you know who is dead last in that category?
Scott Darling.
Scott Darling.
Oh, he has been wretched.
Yeah. I mean, it's hands down Scott Darling. It's not even close. It is Scott Darling. So
did you see some of those ugly goals he gave up against the Maple Leafs the other night?
I did. And it's the same meatballs who are talking bad about Corey Crawford are also the ones that said we should have kept Scott Darling and traded Corey Crawford. And
yes,
that was not a recipe for success. This is not talking bad about Scott Darling. I've met him. He was on that show once. Very nice guy. And I love the success story. Local kid. Want him to do well, but he's not Corey Crawford.
Right, exactly. Like what I said, and a lot of people said, the non-meatballs are, he was one of the best, if not the best backup in the league. He's just not a starter.
Yeah. You come in there and Corey Crawford drunkenly falls down the stairs at the House of Blues. I'm sorry, I didn't say that. He got injured. Scott Darling's fine. Steps in for a couple of games and holds down the fort. You need him to spell you when Corey Crawford has played back-to-back games and needs a night off. All right. But you put him out there every single night. No bueno.
Right, exactly. I mean, I know Carolina isn't very good, but think about the Blackhawks defense the past year or so and how shaky it's been and how the Blackhawks have been able to win games because of Corey Crawford. I mean, that right there. If you're talking bad about Corey Crawford, you're talking bad about the team's MVP because he is the MVP of this team right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Hands down, without a doubt.
And now he has more pressure because we don't have a reliable backup. When Scott Darling and Ray Emery were here, they were very reliable backups. Right now, you have a young kid who you don't know what you're going to get. One night he can be great. The other night he can be absolutely wretched. You don't know what you're going to get in Anton Forsberg.
Yeah, I mean, it's a true story. Is we were all talking, oh, wow, maybe we got a diamond in the rough here. And then I forgot what game it was where he just pooped the bed and really made you question what, direction you're going to go as your backup goalie.
I mean, that's the sad thing is if Forsberg doesn't work out, who else do you have? You don't have anyone else in the pipeline.
Yeah, I mean, Berube, who's terrible.
No.
But,
Glass, no.
Oh. But, here's the thing, is the Blackhawks just got Christmas break off. So they were off Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, today we're recording this, or the day after Christmas, and then tomorrow. But then they play 3 games in 4 days against some really good teams. It starts off with at Vancouver, at Edmonton, at Calgary.
I mean, Edmonton's been struggling. Vancouver isn't that great, but you're playing those games in their house, and playing Edmonton in their house and Calgary is never easy.
Yeah, and then when you're right after that is you go from the West Coast all the way to New York to play the Rangers.
Just after you were there in New Jersey too, no less.
And then you come right back home after one day off and you host the Vegas Knights, who aren't as hot as they were, but are still a pretty darn good team.
Yeah. Only their second meeting against them this year, isn't it?
Yep. And yeah, I'm gonna try to go. I'm gonna try to see if I can get some last minute tickets. But yeah, this is not an easy time for the Blackhawks, and it's not a time for them to be struggling. You've got to come out and win these games, and we keep talking about this. And you don't get any consistency. You win a couple games and kind of fool people into thinking that maybe you're going to go on the streak, and then you come crashing into a fiery brick wall.
Yeah, and I mean, talk about crashing into a fiery brick wall. It's not like they were close losses where the puck just didn't bounce your way. I mean, you got killed in those 2 games. You saw kind of what you saw before the win streak. And again, the win streak was kind of odd because they barely pulled it out against some really bad teams at home, yet they played one of the best teams this year in the NHL and one of the best home teams in the Winnipeg Jets, and you crushed them in their own building. So it was a very, very odd win streak, to say the least.
Yeah, and I missed the first period of the Stars game, but I turned it on in the second, and I was just like, what is going on? This is just ugly.
Yeah, after it went to 3-0, I turned it off. It was too hard to watch. And, I'll tell you something else. That place in Dallas, whatever the arena is, American Airlines Center, whatever it's called, that has become a house of horror for the Blackhawks.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's crazy is one game Patrick Sharp is a healthy scratch because he's playing awful, and the next game he comes in, he's playing on the top line. This crazy, mishmash lines that Quenneville's been doing. Just
why was he changing things during a win streak? When things were working, why would you change that?
I just, Quenneville has just been doing a lot of weird stuff, and none of it's really working.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you want to make line changes, make that after a few losses, but when things are working, why would you change it?
Couldn't tell you. couldn't begin to tell you.
A lot of people were confused by that, including myself. And in terms of Patrick Sharp, the way I see Patrick Sharp is he's not a terrible player, but he's not doing anything. He's just kind of there.
Yeah, he's just filling a void.
Yeah, nice. Exactly. And I get you want to get Richard Panik going. I get that. I know he's a bit more important in terms of long-term with him than Patrick Sharp, considering Sharp is on a 1-year deal and he's probably going to be done with NHL hockey after this season. But don't make those changes in the middle of a win streak. Ride it out until things stop working. Until then, if it ain't broke, don't try to fix it. That was my whole thing. If they were in the middle of a losing streak and then they made that change, I'd be all for it. Believe me. But the timing just didn't seem right.
I agree with you. I fully agree with you. But yeah, Blackhawks, it's do or die time now because we're getting in the back nine of the NHL season, and you're starting to string a lot of games together in a short number of days. And you can't be trailing in the wild card standings and have to go on this amazing streak to make the playoffs and expect to do anything. So it's kind of put up or shut up time for the Blackhawks.
Well, and I mean, think about it. They went on a 5-game win streak. They beat a couple of division foes, but by the end of that win streak, they were still just barely in the playoff race. So they dug themselves kind of a hole here, especially with those losses against the division teams throughout most of the season. So it's a little scary right now from a Blackhawks perspective in terms of potential playoffs, because I really feel like they have to go on multiple win streaks in order to get in.
Yeah, and they struggle to go on any win streak, so it's not looking very pretty.
Right, and we saw some improvements in the win streak, and then things just kind of went away right away. I think it's safe to say at this point for me that this team just flat out lacks consistency, because look at all the shows we've done this Blackhawks season. 1 week we're saying things look better. 1 week we're saying things don't look good. So what does that tell you? That tells you that there isn't really any consistency. And it's safe to say by pretty much midpoint of the year that there is no consistency with this team. And that is scary if you want to make the playoffs, considering how many good teams are around you. Because, I mean, let's face the facts. Right now this year, the Blues are a better team than you. The Winnipeg Jets are a better team than you. The Nashville Predators are right now far and away a better team than you.
Dallas.
You have Dallas. I mean, Dallas, I think Dallas and the Hawks are kind of evenly matched, but I think Dallas still has kind of more finesse right now in terms of scoring, even though both defenses aren't all that great. Both have solid goalies. Obviously, I think Crawford is better than Bishop, but you look at the finesse that Dallas Stars bring, that's the things we kind of miss from the Blackhawks. So I think they have a slight edge over us too. So there you go.
Yeah. So I don't really have anything else to talk about the Blackhawks. Kind of brings us to the Bears.
Yay.
So I missed the game live. I actually watched the game last night after everybody went to bed. So Christmas night, that was my Christmas present to myself, and Christmas punishment. And in some ways you were like, all right, it's nice to see some positive things, but honestly, it's, the two games where you can really look at the bright spots of what the Bears have done. It's the Bengals, where the Bengals just had given up at that point. They were on a short week. They just had an emotional letdown loss. They just didn't show up to play, and the Bears did. And then this is a Browns team that came and they just committed so many turnovers and penalties and dumb mistakes. And, so again, you're just like, did we play well, or were we just playing somebody that was bad? It's nice to see some positive things from Mitchell Trubisky, who you're banking on being your long-term quarterback. It's nice to see Kyle Fuller look really fantastic. But other than that is, even when we're like, oh, that was a good game by the Bears, they only scored 20 points on a team that's 0-15.
I think you read my mind before this show because you pretty much have the same thoughts I do.
Yeah. I just, they couldn't run the ball. And I get that the Browns have some talent on the team. Like, their defense is actually pretty well coached. They've got some decent players on the front line.
Good. I'll give them that.
Yeah. And they really did get after after Trubisky as far as rushing the passer. I mean, what do you have, 5 sacks? 5 sacks.
Well, that Bears line is completely depleted.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you've got Bobby Massey limping. Leno, I don't know why you gave him that contract extension because he's terrible. Bradley Soule playing guard, Grasu playing center, and so you've got a patchwork, already not good offensive line, and they couldn't run block at all. And that was, exhibited by Jordan Howard having exactly as many rushing yards as Trubisky did.
Yeah.
And he averaged 2 yards a carry.
Yeah,
it was not good.
He didn't get a lot of yards. He got the 2 touchdowns, but he did not get a lot of yards, only 44.
And honestly, this was a pretty evenly fought game until there was a big turning point, and that was the defensive penalty that kept the drive alive by the Browns, and then the Bears had that first screen pass to Benny Cunningham, and that sort of turned the tide and led to the Jordan Howard touchdown run, and because otherwise he was pretty bottled up. There was a 16-yard run, and he only had 44 yards total.
Yeah, and I kind of knew that this would be a problem going into the game with the run because like I said, they have a really good run defense. Cleveland does. They have one of the best run defenses in the league, even though they've given up the most points in the league. The run defense has been very impressive, and I kind of knew that might have been a problem going in. My whole thing with this game was, if there's a positive you want to pick out, that was Trubisky showing athleticism, because we saw that. And even though it was against the Browns, it was still a good, positive thing to see.
Yeah, we saw him making better decisions. And, it's funny is when we talked about the Lions game is, did he have a good game? No, but there was a lot of good takeaways from the game. And I think people beat John Fox up because he said that was Mitch's best game, and it clearly wasn't. But, if he would have reworded it and said that turnovers are bad and we can't have those, but there was so many positive things that we saw from Mitch Trubisky as far as growth of a quarterback, that would be hard to argue.
Yeah, exactly.
And this is, we're seeing a lot of progression from Trubisky, and I get that it's against the Browns or it was against the Bengals, but he made plays he had to make. He didn't. I mean, he ran for yards, but it wasn't the same way as like running quarterbacks did it. It was he read and saw that his targets weren't there, and there was open space, and he just took advantage of it. He took advantage of a really aggressive defense and used his feet to make them pay. And he didn't turn the ball over. There was the one where the wet or the frozen ball got out of his hands trying to make a play, but he quickly located it and dove on it. And there was no interceptions. He put the ball in the right spot, and even with terrible field conditions, he did good things. So it's a lot of positives there.
Yeah, I agree. One thing that I thought would be worth bringing up, Tariq Cohen, 2 running attempts. So once again, they didn't really use him much as a back. I just thought that was one thing to point out, because basically you looked at the rushing and it was 44 yards for Trubisky, 44 yards for Jordan Howard, and 9 yards on 2 attempts for Cohen. Now, with that being said, I really thought that they were going to take this opportunity to spread the run game out more, especially knowing that they have a good run defense. But they didn't. I don't know. Do you think that's me overthinking it, or I don't know? What's your opinion on that?
I'm not. I mean, they should have had more rushing attempts, and they should have tried to get more touches to Cohen. And I was talking with somebody that felt that the Bears should have those 2 really long screens that went to Benny Cunningham should have gone to Tariq Cohen, because he probably would have taken both of those to the house. But my thinking is, and I can't say this for certain, this is just me pontificating, is this is a Browns team that's pretty well coached on defense. I mean, there's some dumb plays, but they're good, or fairly good defense. They got burned bad a couple times this season on screen passes. They have to know that they're vulnerable to screen passes. And when you see Tariq Cohen out there, you've got to think in the back of your mind, watch for screen pass. But when it's Benny Cunningham, you probably let your guard down a little more. And that's my only thinking of it is I would have at least tried it instead of guessing that, nope, not going to, Benny Cunningham's or Tariq Cohen is going to get recognized.
By the Browns.
We're not. You should have at least tried. If you're not going to get him touches in handoffs, you need to at least get him touches with screen passes or lined up as a slot receiver or something.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think that's a very well way of putting it. I just thought I'd kind of bring that up. I looked at the other like receiving stats, and Benny Cunningham was the leader in yards, and Kendall Wright was the leader in catches. Nobody had over 70 yards. Cunningham led with 62. Bellamy had 49. And then Sims's one catch was for all 24 yards of his. And again, Inman wasn't really used all that much. 2 catches, 19 yards.
Yeah. Yeah, Inman was not used again, and you're just like, well, why? Why? I don't understand.
You got him to be a reliable target, especially now that Adam Shaheen wasn't playing. I don't get it.
Yeah, I can't figure it out. Is you've got Josh Bellamy starting. I don't get it. I don't know if it's they see in practice that Inman and Trubisky don't have timing down. I mean, that could be something. And he has good timing with Kendall Wright and Josh Bellamy. But talent-wise, the talent gap is pretty big between Inman and Bellamy as far as being a wide receiver.
Right. I know that it's kind of skewed on the Bears because there's not a lot of talent to begin with, but yeah, you're absolutely right. So yeah, I don't really understand that either. Kendall Wright leading in catches. I mean, they've been targeting Kendall Wright lately, so whatever. I think with a healthy line, they put up more points than 20 against the Browns. I really do.
You'd hope. You'd really hope, but we don't know. Defensive wise, I thought I saw some really good things, especially considering that you were down to the bargain basement pass rushers. There was one drive where DeShone Kizer was rolling out and clearly looking for an underneath target. Didn't see it, wasn't available. The Bears recognized the play and took away his first and second options because he had a mid-yard receiver. They took that away, and then there was the underneath guy. They took him away, and they forced DeShone Kizer to run, but they took away the passing option so quickly that I don't think he was expecting to have to run, and he had to make that decision. And then by the time he put the ball away and started running, the defense collapsed on him, and he only got 2 yards on what should have been a pretty good play. And then you had the almost sack by Sam Acho, and that led to DeShone Kizer throwing it quickly, and Amos just laying the wood on the receiver.
That was probably my favorite play of the game because I went back and watched it myself. I didn't watch much of it live like you. And looking back at that was probably one of my favorite defensive plays of the game right there.
Yeah, I mean, my favorite was the Fuller interception over his shoulder. And it wasn't so much that it was a good defensive play.
No,
it was
that was just a dog crap throw.
It was that I liked that he just turned into the wide receiver and he caught that nice pass over his shoulder.
Yeah, I know what you mean. It was a nice catch, but not really. Like I said, that was just awful by DeShone Kizer.
Yeah, but it was, Josh Gordon is a really, really talented wide receiver, and Kyle Fuller took him away. And I know part of it is DeShone Kizer, if you gave him 20 passes to hit the broadside of a barn, he'd get 6. But when it comes down to it, is Josh Bellamy got taken away by Kyle Fuller.
Yeah, I mean, it was a really nice play to catch the ball. I agree. Not trying to downplay it by any means, but this is call me kind of a Debbie Downer here. And don't get me wrong, it's not like the Bears defense played bad. To me, it felt like the Browns didn't score just because they're that bad.
Oh, they're terrible. And there was some really bad plays by the Bears, but there was some really nice plays considering the amount of talent that they've gotten injured. And I remember the week of the Bengals game is everybody was giving the Bengals the excuse. Well, they've got 5 defensive players on IR. And I was like, how many do you think the Bears have on IR? They've got opening day starting safety, IR. You've got both starting inside linebackers, and both outside linebackers. So all 4 of your linebackers and one of your safeties all on IR. You've got one of your interior defensive linemen on IR. That's 6 starters gone. So, why was it okay for the people to use that as an excuse for the Bengals stinking, but not for the Bears?
Yeah, right.
For a team that doesn't have any pass rushers, there was some really nice things by the Bears. But overall, I can't get excited about this because they beat the Browns.
Right.
They beat a team that it would have been embarrassing if they lost to.
Right. I mean, it was almost like a win by default. And I'm not trying to downplay Trubisky. Like I said, I liked his athleticism. I think that's the biggest takeaway from this game was his athleticism. And of course, Jordan Howard's ability to pound the ball. And by the way, I got a nice new Jordan Howard jersey for Christmas. So really excited about that. But yeah, other than that, I'm just like, well, they didn't lose to the Browns. We weren't embarrassed by that.
Is if you want to start talking about games where I can get excited about, is I'm going to circle a stat. The Bears over the last 4 years are 4-19 in division games. And after next week, it's probably going to be 4-20.
They sweep one division and they can't beat their own division. It's very frustrating.
Did you see Kyle Long tweet out the shirt that said the Bears, the
I had to read
AFC
that.
North champions? I thought it was funny. I would like that
I'd
shirt.
love it too. I wish we could play in that division because the Steelers are probably not going to be contending much longer. They got a bunch of veterans, and you play in a division with the Browns and the Bengals who are going down the crapper. Give me that division any day. Because you know what I was thinking about today is I was driving in the car. I was listening to 670 The Score, and they're talking about all this Bears stuff, and they're talking about the John Fox era. And then I thought, every year you had multiple teams from the NFC North make the playoffs, but the Bears have been consistently in last place. Think about that.
Yep.
This year is the first time in the past few years where multiple teams from the NFC North did not make the playoffs, because think about it. Last year, you had the Packers and the Lions. The year before, you had the Vikings and the Packers. And then you had the Lions and the Packers again. And the Bears have been consistently in last.
But if you think about it, is, a broken bone away from the Packers probably making it again. And the Lions realistically should have. They just had some boneheaded games
losing to the
year.
Bengals to lose out in the playoffs, that's brutal.
Yeah. So, multiple teams won't make it from this division, but there's three playoff caliber teams in the division. The Bears are just coming up the rear.
Yeah, and yeah.
But here's the two things. So the number one thing that I was sitting there watching that game going, man, it'd be really embarrassing to lose to the Browns. But then on the other hand, I was like, man, I would like to draft better. And the Bears ended up with the victory, but ultimately it's going to hurt their draft chances. So as it stands right now, with one game left for everybody on the board, the Bears are currently drafting 9th. If the draft were to happen today, the Bears would draft 9th. And depending on what happens next week, the highest they could draft is 5. But the lowest they could go is 12. So somewhere between 5 and 12, the Bears will draft. And I really hope and expect they lose to the Vikings, because drafting 12 would be terrible for a team that needs a lot. 5 would be great because there's so many quarterbacks going that you feel like you could trade back, still get the guy you want, and pick up extra draft picks.
Yeah, and think about it. this last game against the Vikings, I don't know if we're going to exactly lose because I'm pretty sure the Vikings are going to be resting most of their guys. So I don't know.
I mean, they might. I just don't see them resting everybody. I think they're going to want to come in there with a mentality of, because do you want to go and lose the last game of the season, have a bye game, and then have to kick it into gear for like a legit opponent?
I mean, that's true.
You're probably.
I see what you're saying.
You're probably going to want to go out there at least. I mean, if you're going to rest the players, you're probably going to want to just rest them the second half, but at least get them in there and get a good half of football in. And if they go out there and are just trying to show that they can do it, that Bears aren't going to score on that defense very much because that's a tough defense.
Yeah, it is. And, that's probably a good point. And I know what you mean. It's definitely better for them to lose. I mean, it feels like the last few years we've ended the season in Minnesota hoping to lose for the better draft position. So, yeah, I just didn't want to lose to the Browns, but I wouldn't mind losing again to the Vikings. But losing to the Browns would have been the ultimate gut punch.
Oh, yeah, that would have been really bad.
So let me just say one thing.
And
the Browns I don't know how any fan could root for the Browns. And I know people who do. I know Browns fans. I don't know how they do it. That is a horrifyingly bad franchise.
I had to go to Cleveland for work, and a buddy of mine was like, hey, one of my work friends is from Cleveland, loves the Browns. Can you pick him up a Brown shirt? I was like, okay, I guess. I didn't get it. I didn't understand it. I picked up the shirt, but I just didn't get it. I mean, I guess if that's who you grew up rooting for, you just kind of maintain that loyalty. I mean, I guess, people can ask why I'm still a Bears fan.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. I complain about the Bears all the time. I say how much it sucks being a Bears fan, but after seeing what it's like being a Cleveland Browns fan, like first and foremost, that's got to be the worst because I did a preview article for one of my websites, like about the Battle of the Bad, the Toilet Bowl, and what they were kind of looking at in terms of team this year and the past few years, the past decade, how both the Bears and the Browns have been bad. And I mean, boy, oh boy. I mean, they're going to probably go 0-16 this year. Last year they went 1-15. The year before they went 3-13. Other than a 7-9 year in 2014, they haven't won more than 5 games since 2007. They even had a 10 win plus season since 1994. And remember, they were gone for a while.
Yeah.
It's easy to forget, but they were gone.
Absolutely true. But the scary thing to think about is look at how many teams are very likely going to fire their head coach.
It's going to be a very, very Black Monday.
I think I read somewhere that possibly up to 14 head coaches fired.
That's a lot. That's almost half.
You just wonder who's going to replace all these coaches. That's the part that scares me is if you're Ryan Pace, if you've got, there's a handful of guys that are probably going to be legitimate good coaching prospects, and then there's going to be a bunch of terrible ones. Is if you make that decision, you're firing John Fox, which is the right decision. How do you recruit that coach that you want to come in so you're not just scrambling at the last minute to just have a head coach?
Well, I think there was some good news that came on Christmas Eve right before the Browns game started. I don't know if you saw it, but it was basically saying how though Ted Phillips is doing the research of who's available, that Ryan Pace is going to be making the ultimate hire. So at least that tells me that they have already begun researching candidates now, though they should have done it sooner. Though Fox, I still think, should have been gone sooner. At least they're starting to look now. And I truly hope that this promise stays the way it is, because I do not want Ted Phillips anywhere near a coaching interview. I don't want George McCaskey within 10,000 feet of an interview, because, I mean, anyone could make himself look great to George McCaskey. You could hold up like a big sausage and say, this is what I bring to the Bears. And he'd be like, oh my gosh, you're great. You're hired. No, I want this to be Ryan Pace and his football staff, football people, making this decision, and hopefully this promise stays through.
I agree. I don't want anybody related to the McCaskies to touch this decision.
It should be all right.
In fact, I don't even want them at the press. I don't want them at the press conference.
No, they shouldn't be.
I just want him to sign the paycheck and then hands off. I don't want to see him. I don't want to hear from him.
Right, they can handle the financials, that's fine. And I don't think they're going to be very strict with the financials, because I think it was Dan Bernstein on the radio made this point. I was listening to it driving home, where he said that they've never been like stingy with money when it comes to hiring people. Ryan Pace isn't going to be like, oh, I want this 4-year deal for this new coach. And they're not going to say, no, that's too much money. I don't think that's going to happen. I think they're going to agree on the financial terms here. So let them agree and mutually agree and work on that, the Ted Phillips and the management. But the hire has to come from Ryan Pace alone. And if Phillips and McCaskey have any urge to be in that interview room, I will tie them to chairs with a sock in their mouths so they can't get anywhere until the interview is over.
Yeah, I fully agree. And I'm looking at an article right here that was written a couple weeks ago from Greg Gabriel, who was former NFL evaluator and scouting director for the Bears. And these are his candidates that he feels the Bears, some of the top coaching candidates that the Bears should look at. One, David Shaw, the Stanford head coach. He's got 9 years of experience in the NFL with the Eagles, Ravens, and Raiders on the offensive side. He runs an NFL-style offense at Stanford, and he's supposed to be known as a really good teacher, which with a young team, that's a good thing.
You know, a lot of people kind of like that idea, and I kind of like it too. I think that idea has been getting kind of the most, I kind of like that so far.
Dave Tobe, who's the special teams coordinator for the Chiefs and was the former special teams coordinator for the Bears under Lovey. And he's part of the reason that Devin Hester is what Devin Hester is. And he has been a candidate for a head coaching job for a while. And I think I have loved him as a potential head coach. I remember when they ended up hiring, Dippy Doo. I was like, they should have hired Dave Tobe. And when they hired John Fox, I was like, man, they should have hired Dave Tobe. But you think about, people are like, well, what special teams coordinators have gone on to be head coaches? I'm like, John Harbaugh, Marv Levy, Mike Ditka. So I mean, that the precedence is there. I'm like, those are all 3 Super Bowl winning. Well, Marv Levy went to 4 straight Super Bowls, and that's almost as good as winning one. That's really hard to do. So 2 Super Bowl winners and a 4-time Super Bowl head coach. So that's a pretty good resume. People that have done that. Next one is Pete Carmichael Jr., the Saints offensive coordinator. Sean Payton calls the plays, but when Payton was suspended in 2012, Carmichael was the team's play caller. In that season, the Saints ranked second in yards per game and third in scoring. Josh McDaniels, who scares the daylights out of me after what happened in Denver. But, learning from Belichick can't be a bad thing.
Yeah, probably not. I would imagine not.
Dennis Allen, who's the Saints defensive coordinator, and I think that's probably only just the Saints connection with Ryan Pace. And then the last two are Frank Reich, who's the former backup to Jim Kelly in Buffalo, and he's the Eagles offensive coordinator. And he also is, interesting enough, is he was the quarterback during the largest comeback in NFL history. He was the quarterback for the Bills when they came back from a 35-3 deficit in the third quarter and won 41-38. But yeah, I mean, he's really got things cooking with the Eagles. Even with Carson Wentz out, he's got Nick Foles playing good football. And the last one is Matt LaFleur, the Rams offensive coordinator. He's only 38 years old, and he's in his 10th season of coaching the NFL. So that's, you gotta consider that as a pretty stellar thing if you start coaching in the NFL in your 20s.
Yeah. Yeah, right now, I really couldn't pinpoint any favorite right now. I don't know what Ryan Pace is thinking. I don't know what they're really talking about right now. Did you hear about the whole rumor this morning that someone reported that Arians and the Cardinals were planning to part ways, and then Arians came out and said fake news?
Yeah, I would imagine that, probably not going to happen.
Right. Now, I made a list just now of teams who I think are going to fire their coach and maybe fire their coach. Right now, I kind of 4 maybes and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 pretty sure they're going to fire or have already fired coaches. And you said that there were 14 teams that were going to potentially fire their coaches. Is that what you said?
Yep.
Yeah, so that's kind of scary because there's going to be a lot of teams in on a number of things. Now, what I think the Bears have an advantage is that though they've been bad, they have good, promising pieces for the future, while some of these teams on the list that I've come up with are just complete, utter train wrecks. So hopefully that's something of a positive for the Bears, but it's still kind of scary to think of.
Yeah, I mean, would you want to be a first-time or a head coach and take over for the Giants knowing that you are saddled with Eli Manning for as long as Eli Manning wants to play? No, I don't think so. I think that's a bad option because
you want to go to the Colts.
You want to go to the Colts where, who knows who their quarterback is. It's a terrible disarray team, and Andrew Luck just might leave.
I mean, I'm afraid Andrew Luck may never play another NFL game again.
Yeah, who knows? So without an Andrew Luck, that's just a bad franchise. I mean, at least with the Bears, you're like, well, I saw some really promising things with Mitch Trubisky. Sure, it's a team that's really pooped the bed as far as the last several years, but this is a original franchise, and we've got a young quarterback. That's at least some selling point.
Right. Now, I kind of want to play a little game with you here. I've made that list I told you about of teams. I'm going to read each team and tell me if you agree or disagree they're going to fire their coach.
Okay.
All right, let's start with Tampa Bay.
I say they do.
Because there was a lot of talk about them firing him, especially with the way things have gone this year for them. They were expected to do really big things, and it didn't happen. And I think Dirk is getting a lot of heat there. Next one.
And some of the ways that he got that head coaching job were a little underhanded. So
Yeah,
those things always come back to bite you.
absolutely. Absolutely. The next one I had, we just talked about it. You think Bruce Arians is going to go anywhere or no?
No, I think he stays.
Okay.
I mean, if this was a year where there was a lot of good head coaching candidates and very few teams firing, maybe they consider it. But with how many teams are going to be looking for head coaches, what sort of attraction do you have to go to the Cardinals? So I think they keep Bruce Arians because he's a good head coach. Just things aren't going well there.
Yeah, that's fair. Because there was the whole thing of when he was rumored to be leaving, and people were saying, "Oh, well, the Bears, remember, they couldn't hire him the first time. This time they will." And what I kind of thought was he was the perfect guy to hire in 2012 when it was a veteran team that was still looking to compete right off the bat. Now, considering it's a very young team and there's going to be a lot of development to do, I don't know if it's as good of a fit as it was in 2012 when it was a fit that was made in heaven and should have happened.
Yeah, but I think Bruce stays. I think he gets another shot.
Okay. You don't have to answer this because it's already happened. Giants have already fired McAdoo, so they're looking.
That was the most guaranteed firing in the NFL even before it happened.
Yeah.
He was a dead man walking.
He made John Fox look good. I mean, that was a complete disaster.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay, let's see what's next. Jay Gruden, you think he's going anywhere?
No.
Don't think so?
Mm-mm.
Okay. Chuck Pagano, Colts. I think he's gone. What do you think?
He's so gone.
Yeah.
He's probably packed up his stuff.
Yeah. Cleveland Browns, Hugh Jackson. I mean, I don't think he's a bad coach. I think he's dealt with some really, really bad situations here, but he's 1-27 as a head coach, and results is what gets you jobs in the NFL. And if you don't get results, you don't get them quick, you tend to be booted out. So I think he's gone. What do you think?
I think he's back.
You think he's back?
I think Hugh Jackson is back.
Okay. Interesting. Bengals.
I think they give him one shot. And because, I mean, when you give a guy Deshaun Kaiser to be your quarterback, you got to give a guy another chance.
That's fair. That's fair. I mean, I think they should give him one more chance personally. I just don't know if he'll get it because they've hired new people in the front office. So part of me just thinks that they'd want to clear house there, but that's a good point as well that you made. Okay. Sorry, where was I? Oh yeah, we know Marvin Lewis is going to be gone from the Bengals. So
yeah, it was a quit before he got fired. Sitch.
Yeah, it's really too bad situation for him because the guy has a winning record since 2003, but no playoff wins. Yeesh.
Yep, that's no bueno.
Yeah, it's too bad for him. Okay, next, I think Vance Joseph is gone.
Oh yeah, Vance Joseph is so gone.
He's pretty much lost that team at this point.
Yeah, and Elway is not a guy that's patient.
No. I mean, Fox left right after the Super Bowl, right? After they went to the Super Bowl? Or was that the year after?
He got fired right after the Super Bowl.
Right. Yeah, that's right. Okay, obviously, we know the Bears are going to fire John Fox. John Fox knows he's gone. No really debate there. I have 4 teams on the fence here. First of all, I'm going to bring up the Buffalo Bills. What do you think they're going to do there with Sean McDermott?
I think he stays.
Think he stays?
Yeah.
I think this one's kind of silly, but people are bringing it up, and I don't think he's going to be fired. Jim Caldwell in Detroit, I don't think they're going to fire him.
I don't think so either. I don't think so. I think there'll be some shakeup in his coaching staff, but I think he comes back.
Hey, Jim Bob Cooter, you could come over here.
Jim Bob
Cooter. Because in my opinion, I think Jim Caldwell is the reason the Lions have seen success. I think because you look at Detroit as a whole, they don't have a bunch of studs, but the way they've been coached, they've been able to win games over the past few years and make it to 2 playoff berths recently. So I think Caldwell is someone you have to give a lot of credit in Detroit.
Yeah, I mean, their big flaw this year is they can't run the ball.
Right. And you're relying on Stafford way too much.
And Jim Caldwell can't play left tackle, so I don't know what you can do with it.
Yeah, there you go. Exactly. Heck, if you didn't have his good coaching, they wouldn't be in the position they were in. So, I mean, like I said, give them credit there.
Honestly, I would think, Mike McCarthy should be fired before Jim Caldwell at this point. Not
that was the next team I was going to get to, actually.
I don't think they fire him, but
I don't think so either.
I think his seat gets a little warm.
Because I don't think McCarthy is a terrible coach like some Green Bay fans think, but I definitely think that his successes were greatly in part that he had 2 of the greatest quarterbacks ever.
Yep. That helps a lot.
I mean, they made him look like a star coach when, look, I know I may sound biased as a Bears fan, but I know I'm not the only one who thinks this. You take away Aaron Rodgers, that Packers team it's trash. It's not good at all.
I mean, you're supposed to be this offensive guy, and you had 4 years to develop Brent Hundley, and he looks like steaming doo-doo when he's out there. So that's on you. That's on you. If he couldn't play, is your job to make sure you got somebody in there that can play, that you're grooming. And he didn't. That's his big flaw is, if you've got Aaron Rodgers, most people can coach pretty well, but when he gets hurt, that's where you're being judged.
Yeah, I mean, here's another thing to keep in mind. Look at the Packers defense since the year after they won the Super Bowl. Because the year they won the Super Bowl and beat the Bears, single tier, that was a really good defense. Since then, their defense never has really been any good, and it just doesn't seem like they've done all that much to try to fix it. They tried to draft a guy here or there. They tried to plug in here or there, but it's never really been a great defense since. But in the regular season, it hasn't been much of a problem because Aaron Rodgers was so good.
Yeah, pretty much.
So, yeah, there was some question there. Like I said, I think he should be fired, but I don't think he will be. A lot of Green Bay fans want a lot of shakeup in their front office and everything and the coaching, but I think everything's going to pretty much stay status quo.
Yeah, nothing's changing in that division except with the Bears.
Yeah, I'd agree. The last one I wanted to ask you about, and I'm sure you may have another one on the list I haven't thought of. You think John Harbaugh's gone or no?
I don't think so. I think that's they keep a pretty stable house, and I don't think he goes. I think he comes back. That's just the way I look at it. Is I think remember how in the beginning of the season Pittsburgh started out really not good, but they've turned it around. People at the beginning of the season were calling for Tomlin's head. I was like, even if that season went just completely off the rails, Tomlin wasn't going to go because the organizations are trying to maintain consistency. And if you're a good head coach and you've done good things with the team, just had a down year or two, I think they just give you more breaks, and they just try to, upper management goes, well, I just need to give him better players. I need to give him players to put him in a position to win. And I think that's the way that they look at things with the Ravens. So I think he comes back.
Yeah, because at the beginning of the year when they didn't look so great, I think he was on the hot seat with a lot of people, but people are kind of looking now saying, well, they've done pretty well overall. I think they're 9-7 right now?
Yeah, I mean, they might make the playoffs.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, his seat may have cooled down a little bit since the beginning of the season.
Let's see. Who else?
I'm sure there's a big one I'm probably missing that I didn't think of.
Atlanta's having
I don't think Jason Garrett's going anywhere.
That's a possibility.
You think
I think
so?
that's a possibility. Because you've got a volatile owner / GM. I know his son is doing a lot more with the team now. Jerry Jones' son's doing a lot more and having more influence. But I think if this was still Jerry running the show, it was a one-man thing, I think Jason Garrett's gone. Now that Jerry Jones' son has some influence, he's probably trying to keep him there because I don't think he's a bad head coach.
Okay.
But I think that's a real possibility.
Okay. Yeah, he's been there since 2010. 64-52.
I think Quinn in Atlanta, he's rough season, but he stays. I've heard some rumblings from people saying Andy Reid gets fired in Kansas City, and I think that's silly.
Yeah, why would you do that? I mean, didn't they just win the division?
Yeah, and I mean they're really good. They're a really talented team. It's just had a rough middle stretch there for a while.
I don't think Bill O'Brien's going anywhere. He just had his whole team injured.
Yeah, I mean that's a real possibility that he could be gone too.
You think?
That's a real.
I mean, he just kind of dealt an unlucky hand this year.
Yeah, but you went 4-11, and you don't have, and all your eggs are in the Deshaun Watson basket, which he's got 2 ACL blowouts, and you don't have a first round pick. I know it's a tough situation, but he was handed a team with just a stud defense, and they've underperformed. And he had a top draft pick quarterback, and I know you can't control ACL injuries, but still they go 4-11.
I just don't think that'd be fair because look at all the big players that were lost due to injury. I think that's a much better team if they're not injured. But, like I said before, it's a performance-based league, so we'll see. Obviously there are ones here. Sean McVay's obviously not going anywhere. I don't think Adam Gase is really going to go anywhere yet. I think next year is going to really be telling of Adam Gase's future with the Dolphins. At least that's my opinion.
Yeah, he's going to have to really put the foot on the gas because you got your season derailed by quarterback injury, but you vouched for the quarterback you brought in, and everything kind of crumbled alongside that. You get the things that Jay Cutler brings with you, and that's some dissent and crumbling play around you.
And obviously, I don't think Kyle Shanahan is going anywhere.
No.
I mean, I like what Shanahan's doing down there. I think a lot of people do.
Yeah. So
they just have to get some talent.
Yeah, I don't see that happening or him going anywhere.
Now, here's another interesting one I forgot to put on my list. Todd Bowles. What do you think of him?
He comes back. I'm pretty sure.
he coached his team to be more competitive than I thought they would be.
I thought the Jets were going to just, be so bad. I thought they were going to be 0-16 bad.
I predicted 115.
They were in a lot of games against some really good teams, and they have the same record as the Bears with garbage at quarterback. Garbage.
I mean, that team is pretty much garbage from up to down.
Yeah, so you've got to, honestly, he should get votes as coach of the year.
Hey, you got to give him credit for what he's done with that roster. I mean, that's pretty impressive. I think we pretty much covered everyone. I mean, there's your playoff teams. Those coaches aren't going anywhere unless, I know we talked about it earlier, if Mike Tomlin's going to want to move on after this year, knowing that there's probably going to be some retirements with the Steelers after this year. I mean, that's always a possibility that he might leave, but I can't see him getting fired.
No, he doesn't get fired. But there's one last...
There's no way he'd get fired.
But there's one last thing I want to talk about, and we alluded to it earlier, is John Fox's monkey Gidget.
Oh, yeah, I had a monkey.
You were Pampers. He was part of the family. I honestly... So I didn't catch any of this because I was on trying to get stuff done before Christmas, and my friend texted me. He's like, "You got to watch this. I can't even make this sound real." And I'm watching, and I was like, "Well, John Fox owned a monkey. That kind of explains him."
It was a good monkey, but we left her out in the sun too long and she died. At least, isn't that what he said?
I didn't hear anything about what happened to it. He just said it was part of the family. He wore Pampers. That's all the only part I heard. But who knows what happened to his monkey?
Yeah, I thought I heard that's what he said. I didn't hear the whole interview. I just heard him say, "Oh, the monkey. We had a monkey." I'm just like, well, here's a sign that a guy knows he's gone. Everyone knows he's gone, and who cares at this point? So let's talk about monkeys.
Yeah, I tweeted out. I was like, Gidget had a pet monkey named John Fox.
I said that the monkey was the one who, made the decision to challenge the pylon play.
It probably would have been a better decision. Yeah, so it's just like, oh my God, John Fox as a monkey. What a ridiculous... there's nothing else to talk to this man about but his stupid pet monkey Gidget.
Yeah, let's fill some time with this guy. Whatever.
Yeah, we can't
until he gets out.
Yeah, they're like, he's a sad old man, and we can't ask him about his future in coaching because there is none. You think you treat him like he's John Coffey on the Green Mile, and you're like, all right, well, let's ask him about wrapping Christmas presents and his monkey. That's all you got. That's how you know.
We wrap presents, and I didn't use a lot of tape because I worried if we used too much tape that we wouldn't have enough to wrap the other presents with.
It makes you wonder what the New York. I mean, see, that's where you get the difference of the team selected interviewer and actual media asking questions, because this season they've gotten pretty New York media ruthless with John Fox as far as asking him questions, and so to the point where he's on with the team picked interviewer. Here's some softballs. Let me lob them gently to you. The Ryan Pace style. And I know that McAdoo, before he got fired at New York, was not getting those kind of questions.
No, he wasn't. He wasn't.
It was how hard do you want me to kick you in the ass on the way out the door?
Yeah, really. I mean, there is nothing more ruthless than a New York media. It's just any part of the New York media. It is just flat ruthless, no matter what sport.
Oh, and they're fans. The fans are ruthless. Not Eagles ruthless, but pretty ruthless. And
they
the
demand
media,
perfection every time.
Yeah, and
they say we're the big city. We need to be perfect.
Yeah, and we get a Larry Meyer questions.
Yeah, exactly.
Ryan, I've got a question. Your team is 3-75. And I've got a really hard quitting question for you. What's your favorite color?
Well, it tends to be green because green's the color of a football field. But I do like brown because that was the color of my monkey.
And then you get the Ryan Pace. It's like, we expect our team to come out and compete, and we're not gonna have this opportunity to draft this high again. We really expect our team to compete next year for a Super Bowl. Like, somebody asked this man a question. That's a real question.
Yeah, I mean, what's left to ask though?
I don't know.
There isn't much.
But you know what?
Because you're not going to get a straight answer from Fox, so why bother?
All I can say is
Foxy.
Rest in peace, Gidget, and rest in peace this Bears season.
Yeah. I look at John Fox and people are saying, he may not be a good coach, but he's not a bad guy. Do we really want to wish him all this? And what I say is, look, he can just retire now. He's old enough. He's got millions of dollars. He can retire now with all his money, and he could sit back, relax, and not worry about another thing again. I mean, doesn't that sound awesome?
Yeah. Well, I mean, but the thing is this is a guy who that's all he knows. Like he, in that interview, was sad. He was just like, I don't watch movies. I don't watch them. He's like, they're like, what's your favorite movie? He's like, I don't watch movies. I guess like Christmas Vacation is a pretty good one. Like, you don't watch movies, you don't watch television shows, you don't go out, you just coach football and watch tape. That's your whole life. And then when, somebody's just like, you're not good at this anymore. Adios. Like, it just, like, your whole life is turned upside down. Like, I mean, I feel bad because, like,
right.
I don't think he's a bad guy. Like,
not at all.
I would probably have a blast, going out having a couple beers and a nice dinner with John Fox. Like, that guy could probably have you laughing and, good stories and good conversation.
I feel like he's actually a pretty funny guy. Like when he's having a casual conversation, I bet he is a pretty funny guy.
Yeah. Like, I thought George Bush was a terrible president, but you know what? I bet he was a riot to go to a party with.
Oh, absolutely. And
so you're
like, I'm just imagining a party with JW and John Fox.
So it's one of those things. It's like, but I don't want him coaching my football team. I want to see victories. So, if you want to come and hang out in the entryway of Soldier Field or go into the South parking lot and hang out with the fans, yeah, go for it. You can do that. But if you want to coach this team, nope, don't want you.
Yeah, exactly. I like him as a guy from what I've heard. There's no reason to hate him as a person, but just not a good coach for this at all. Not good at all. And hey, if I had the opportunity to be like, go to John Fox and kind of be his retirement mentor and show him a bunch of cool things, I'd definitely do it. I'd say, come on, John, you could watch these movies. They're really cool. You could go here. It's really fun. You could do all this fun stuff. Like, I'd encourage him to have fun in retirement. I just don't want him coaching the Bears.
Yeah, that's right there with you. But I think this is going to wrap it up for this episode of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. I want to thank everybody for checking out the show. Thank you guys so much for listening. Please make sure you hit subscribe however you listen to podcasts, whether it's iTunes, Stitcher, or YouTube. Share with your friends. And thank you guys so much for listening. And until next time, bear down.
Cubs win! What a lucky break! The good Lord wants the Cubs to win!
We thank Ditka and God for all they have provided.
Cubs win! Cubs win! Cubs win!
Oh, I don't want her. You can have her. She's a Packer fan.
She can't fit in my van.
And she looks like number New Yorkers. Smoking crack is not legal on planes. Bears 31 to -7. The Bears.
Oh, when the Bears go bearing down.